Welcome to Virginia, the land of rolling Blue Ridge Mountains, colonial charm, and white picket fences stretching toward the horizon. At least that is the version you will find in the visitor centers. But locals know a different Virginia, a Virginia of abandoned asylums where forced sterilizations continued well into the 20th century. Forests so paranormal that the Virginia Department of Forestry has officially called them among the most paranormal places in the Commonwealth. Small towns where violent crime rates exceed 900 incidents per 100,000 residents. We are talking about places where ghost ships have been spotted floating above the tree line, where the specter of a teenage opera singer still pulls the hair of female travelers on train platforms, where a man in a bunny costume terrorized residents so severely that police still stake out a bridge every Halloween, more than 50 years later. These are not campfire stories. These are documented incidents, police reports, and government acknowledgments that some corners of Virginia are genuinely unsettling. We are counting down 12 small towns in Virginia where locals genuinely warn you not to visit. By the end, you will understand why. Before we begin, if you find this fascinating, tap that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what is coming. Number 12, Clifton. We begin our countdown in Fairfax County with a town that looks like a postcard from the 1800s. Clifton sits just 10 miles east of Manassas, a Civil War-era community that witnessed some of the bloodiest battles in American history. The brick buildings and tree-lined streets suggest nothing but charm. But drive a few miles down the road, and you will find a railway overpass that has terrified locals for more than 50 years. The Colchester Overpass was built around 1906 near the site of an old Civil War railway station. Today, locals call it the Bunnyman Bridge. In 1970, Fairfax County Police received 2 separate reports about a man in a white bunny costume wielding an axe and threatening people near the bridge. Both investigations were eventually closed for lack of evidence, but the legend only grew. What makes Clifton genuinely creepy is not just the legend, it is the official response. Starting in 2003, local authorities began controlling access to the bridge during Halloween. Police now stake out the area every October. Arrests occur regularly. The fact that law enforcement takes the Bunnyman seriously enough to deploy officers more than 50 years after the original incidents tells you something about this place. A number of the small-town buildings and residences are said to be haunted by Civil War spirits. But it is the image of that white bunny costume in the darkness that keeps visitors away after sunset. Number 11, Pamplin. Head southwest to Appomattox County, and you will find a town where the commercial district sits almost entirely abandoned. Pamplin was once a prosperous 19th century community. Its economic backbone was the railroad after the tracks were laid in the 1850s. Sitting at the intersection of the Norfolk and Western rail lines, the town was a frequent stopping-off point for travelers heading across Virginia. But if the railroad was the town's spine, its heart was a factory that made clay smoking pipes. The factory opened around 1880 and was, at one point, the largest producer of such pipes in the world. At its busiest, the factory was sending more than 1 million Pamplin pipes a month down the line. Workers filled the streets. Money flowed through local businesses. The future looked bright. Then the motor car arrived. Rail travel dwindled. By the 1930s, passenger service to Pamplin had ceased entirely. Smoking habits changed too, creating challenges for the pipe factory. It was sold at auction in 1938. Today, walking through Pamplin feels like stepping into a photograph that someone forgot to finish developing. Empty storefronts line the main street. Windows that once displayed goods now show only darkness and dust. The few residents who remain speak of a town that simply stopped one day, frozen in time while the rest of Virginia moved forward. Number 10. Union Level. Drive toward the North Carolina border and you will pass a sign that makes a bold claim. Union Level, Virginia, the most visited ghost town in Virginia. Or so the sign on the building across the street would have you believe. Driving past Union Level feels like flipping through a sepia-toned photograph album at highway speed. This authentic Main Street ghost town still shows off rows of abandoned storefronts that once bustled with tobacco traders and farmers stocking up on supplies. The town sits in what was once Virginia's greatest agricultural region, where tobacco built fortunes and industry brought stage routes and railroads through the countryside. What makes Union Level particularly haunting is how visible it remains from the road. You can see the decay from your car window, the empty buildings, the faded signs, the remnants of a community that prosperity abandoned faster than morning fog burns off the fields. But here is the warning that matters. If you make the trip to Union Level, please be respectful of the remaining residents. All of the buildings here are on private property and monitored regularly by the sheriff's office. Do not trespass. The locals who still call this place home do not appreciate curiosity seekers wandering through what remains of their community. Number 9. Wash Woods. On Virginia's southeastern coast, hidden within False Cape State Park, lies a ghost hamlet that most visitors will never see. Wash Woods is accessible only by hiking or biking several miles through stunning maritime wilderness. There are no roads, no easy paths. Just sand and scrub pine standing between you and one of Virginia's most poignant abandoned communities. Once a thriving fishing and hunting settlement of roughly 300 people, Wash Woods eventually surrendered to isolation and the relentless Atlantic storms that reshaped the barrier islands over generations. Although no one really knows for certain, legend says the community began 300 to 400 years ago when sailors shipwrecked off the coast and decided to stay. The old cemetery still stands as a haunting memorial. Weathered headstones mark lives lived at the very edge of land and sea. The church steeple remains pierced the sky like a skeletal finger pointing toward heaven. The gravestones bear names of families who lived and died within sound of the waves, their descendants long scattered to other shores. Nature is reclaiming what humans abandoned here. The dunes shift. The vegetation grows wild. But those graves remain, reminding anyone who makes the trek that this was once a real community. Real families, real lives, all eventually defeated by the simple cruelty of geography. Number 8. Pocahontas. Nestled in the Appalachian Mountains just a short distance from the West Virginia border, sits a tiny town with an enormous and sinister history. Pocahontas has a population of just around 300 people today, but this place is largely considered to be where the entire Appalachian coal boom began. As early as 1750, it was known that coal existed in this part of the country. When commercial mining finally began in earnest, Pocahontas became the epicenter of an industry that would define and devastate the region for generations. During its 7 decades of operation, the mine produced over 44 million tons of coal. Workers flooded into the mountains. Company towns sprang up overnight. Fortunes were made by men who never set foot underground. The miners themselves faced a different reality: cave-ins, explosions, lung disease. The mountains gave up their coal, but they demanded payment in human lives. By the 1920s, the coal boom drastically declined. The development of the town declined with it. Today, Pocahontas feels suspended between memorial and graveyard. The old mining infrastructure remains as a testament to what was extracted here. Not just coal, but lives, health, hope. The town survives, barely, but the ghosts of those who died in the darkness below still seem to linger in the quiet mountain air. Number 7. Appalachia. The town of Appalachia in Wise County shares its name with the mountain range that surrounds it. With just under 1,800 residents, it is the smallest place on our list. But small does not mean safe. Appalachia has been ranked as one of the most dangerous small towns in Virginia, showing higher than average percentages for violent crime despite its tiny population. The beautiful mountain setting contrasts sharply with the dark underbelly that statistics reveal. And political scandal is not new to the town either. Back in 2006, 14 Appalachia residents were indicted on charges of electoral fraud. Among those charged was the town's own mayor. When even local leadership cannot be trusted, when the people elected to protect a community instead exploit it, something fundamental has broken. The town does have attractions. The Powell River Trail offers scenic hiking. The historic Kelly View School preserves local heritage. A Veterans and Miners Memorial Wall honors those who served and sacrificed. But these bright spots exist alongside a troubling reality that residents live with daily. If learning where not to wander after dark is useful to you, the subscribe button is waiting. I post these warnings every week with real research and genuine local testimonials. Number 6. Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg presents an interesting contradiction. This historic city draws tourists from around the world who come to walk the streets where George Washington once walked. They visit battlefields where some of the Civil War's bloodiest fighting occurred. They spend money in charming shops and restaurants. But that tourist economy creates problems alongside prosperity. The city reports a violent crime rate of 4.14 per 1,000 people. More troubling is the property crime rate of 39.85 per 1,000 people. These figures are particularly concerning given the city's size and its reputation as a historic gem. The high level of tourism plays a dual role in the crime dynamics here. The influx of visitors boosts the local economy, but it also increases opportunities for crimes, particularly theft and vandalism. The presence of tourists often leads to a temporary population increase that can overwhelm local law enforcement resources. And then there are the ghosts. Many legends and ghost stories abound in this historic town. A lady in white is often seen haunting a church from the 1730s where George Washington himself worshipped. The battlefields that draw tourists by day become something else entirely after dark. Visitors report hearing drums, cannon fire, and the screams of wounded soldiers on fields where tens of thousands died over 4 brutal years of the Civil War. Number 5. Diggs and Old House Woods. In Matthews County, off the coast of Gloucester, is the small, unassuming town of Diggs. It looks like a cozy little place, surrounded by the Chesapeake Bay, offering coastal views and respite from city life. But travel down Beach Haven Road just outside of town, and you come to a 50-acre patch of dense woodland that changes everything. Old House Woods has been deemed by no less an authority than the Virginia Department of Forestry to be one of the most haunted places in the entire Commonwealth. This is not local legend. This is a government agency acknowledging that something genuinely strange happens in these trees. For decades, people have talked about the remote stand of pine trees near Haven Beach. Stories tell of headless specters, of ships sailing in the air above the tree line, of buried treasure guarded by supernatural forces, and of women in white drifting between the trunks. Jesse V. Hudgens, a Matthews Courthouse merchant who lived near the woods in the early 20th century, warned that Old House Woods is haunted and advised people to keep away. He said you cannot defy the guardian spirits that watch over the place and get away with it. One frequently reported apparition is the Storm Woman, a fair-haired figure in a nightgown who hovers above the treetops surrounded by blue or greenish light. She appears just before storms and shrieks warnings to nearby ships. Locals consider her one of the kinder spirits. The others are far less benevolent. Number 4. Williamsburg. The most haunted city in Virginia is not some forgotten backwater. It is one of America's premier tourist destinations. Williamsburg served as the capital of the Virginia colony and played a crucial role in the American Revolution. 3 centuries of blood and betrayal have soaked into these cobblestones. The Colonial Ghost Tour takes visitors on a roughly 90-minute moonlit walk through the haunted historic grounds. But you do not need a guide to sense that something lingers here. The weight of history presses down on these streets after dark. Consider the Ferry Plantation House. The grounds date back to 1642. After the ferry closed, several buildings were erected in succession, only to be torn down or destroyed. Eventually, the last buildings fell into disrepair and were all but forgotten by the living. But the previous residents never truly left. 11 distinct spirits have been reported to haunt this single property. Williamsburg's charm draws millions of visitors each year. They come for the living history demonstrations, the period costumes, the carefully preserved architecture. What they find, especially after sunset, is a reminder that 300 years of human drama leaves traces that never fully fade. The executed prisoners, the Revolutionary War soldiers, the enslaved people who built this prosperity but never benefited from it. They all remain. Number 3. Staunton. Known officially as the most haunted town in Virginia, Staunton carries a darkness that extends far beyond ghost stories. This is a place where institutional horror occurred within living memory. The screams of patients still seem to echo through abandoned hallways that the state would rather forget. The DeJarnette Sanitarium has unsettled residents of Staunton for over 80 years. Within those walls, forced sterilizations and lobotomies were carried out on unwilling patients who were deemed unfit to breed. Virginia's eugenics program operated here, destroying lives in the name of discredited science. The building still stands, decaying but not demolished, a monument to medical atrocity. But Staunton's horrors extend beyond the sanitarium. The train station has been rebuilt 3 times after disasters. During the Civil War, Union General David Hunter and his troops set fire to the original station. An incoming train derailed and tore through the rebuilt station only 20 years later. Spirits from these catastrophes are said to roam the third and current construction. The apparition of the derailment's sole casualty, a 17-year-old opera singer, is said to wander the platform. She is known for pulling the hair of female travelers. Then there is the Black Widow. Charlotte Kaufman lived in what is now the Spots Kaufman House, a building with a history extending over 260 years. Multiple misfortunes and deaths occurred on that property, but none so infamous as the woman locals came to call the Black Widow, whose husbands had an unfortunate tendency to die. From mass graves of Civil War soldiers to the decaying sanitarium, ghost stories are second nature to Staunton locals. They grow up with them, they live alongside them, and they warn visitors that some places in their town should not be explored after dark. Number 2. Petersburg. Petersburg experiences severe public safety challenges that go far beyond the supernatural. The violent crime rate reaches 8.18 per 1,000 people. The property crime rate hits 25.66 per 1,000. These numbers alone qualify Petersburg as one of the most dangerous cities in Virginia. In 2023, the city recorded a total of 978 crimes, 18 murders, 20 robberies, 191 assaults, 71 burglaries, 81 motor vehicle thefts. For a city of this size, those numbers tell a story of a community in crisis. The median home price in Petersburg is just $111,300. That affordability comes at a cost that never appears on a mortgage statement. Economic challenges, high unemployment, and a declining tax base create an environment where desperation becomes routine. But Petersburg's troubles have deeper roots. This city endured the longest siege in American warfare. For 9 brutal months in 1864 and 1865, Union and Confederate forces fought over this ground. Trenches still scar the landscape. Tens of thousands died within sight of homes that still stand today. The ghosts of that siege have never fully departed. Residents report seeing soldiers in period uniforms wandering the battlefields at night. They report the sound of artillery fire where no cannons exist. The weight of all that death and suffering seems to press down on Petersburg, adding supernatural darkness to the very real dangers that statistics reveal. Number 1. Blackstone. We arrive at the town that holds Virginia's most troubling distinction. Blackstone, in Nottoway County, has the highest violent crime rate in the entire Commonwealth. Approximately 933 reported violent crimes per 100,000 residents. For a town with a population under 4,000, those numbers are almost incomprehensible. Blackstone was once a prosperous railway junction. Trains brought commerce, travelers, and opportunity. Fort Pickett, now renamed Fort Barfoot, provided military presence and economic stability for decades. The infrastructure for success existed here, but something went wrong. The train stopped bringing prosperity, and the military presence could not protect the town from economic decline. Poverty crept in, and opportunity crept out. The cycle that affects so many small American towns accelerated here with devastating results. Today, residents warn family members not to visit after dark. Online forums contain desperate posts from locals describing a community where crime has become normalized. Walking to the shop after sunset requires calculation and courage. The statistics that place Blackstone at the top of Virginia's dangerous places list match the lived experience of those who call it home. The people who remain in Blackstone are not statistics. They are families making the best of circumstances that would break most communities. They attend the same churches their grandparents attended. They shop at stores their families have patronized for generations. They love their town even as they acknowledge its dangers. Blackstone deserves better than it has received from state and federal authorities. Investment has bypassed this community for too long. Until that changes, this small Virginia town remains the place where locals most urgently warn visitors to stay away. If you found this video useful, please subscribe. Make sure to watch the next video appearing on your screen right now.